Hello and welcome everybody. So my name is Steven, and this is the show where we bring together experts to break down some of the most fundamental topics in HR. Today's topic for discussion is new hire orientations. And I have some amazing panelists with me here today who are going to give a masterclass on the topic. We have HR Manager April Powell. We have Lotus Buckner, who's the VP of People at Chowbus and founder and CEO at LB Talent Solutions. And we have Tammy Burnett, Senior Manager of People and Culture. So excited to have all of you with us. Give a nice wave to the viewers at home. They're very excited to be here. Great waves. So let's talk about new hire orientations. And Tammy, I'd actually love for you to kick this conversation off with a question that's kind of defining things, right? So what really is a new hire orientation, and how is it different from onboarding? Because I know a lot of people listening can kind of get those mixed up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I tend to think of onboarding as the whole process of bringing a new person to the company. So that really starts with recruitment, even though a lot of folks don't think about it that way. But onboarding is basically from the moment someone is joining your company and then through really the first, I would say 3 to 6 months of learning the culture and the workplace. New hire orientation is usually a specific set of activities that happen during the onboarding phase that really outline policies, procedures, anything that somebody needs to know, logistics about scheduling, dress code, sort of all those basics of coming to work at a new company.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's great. And let's talk about that set of activities a little bit, because when I think of new hire orientation, my mind immediately goes to a meeting, right? Or like your first day of work. And Lotus and April, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Is that correct? Is that a correct idea? Like, is new hire orientation just like a singular meeting, or is it a little bit broader than that too? What are your kind of thoughts on that?
It depends on your organization. So for a small organization, it could be a single day. For a large organization, it could mean a lot more. I've had new hire orientations that have been a full week. Those are long. I prefer them a little bit shorter, but yeah, I think it really depends on your organization and what regulations you fall under as far as government regulations, what kind of safety training you need to give folks, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Lotus, anything you would add to that?
No, I would agree with that. I think it depends on a lot of different factors. And so it can last anywhere from an hour at a really small or tiny startup where you don't really have a lot of new hires all the time. Or it can last up to a week or even 2 at really large companies where they have a lot of resources and money and they can throw these really big orientation events. It can also depend, I think, on your role, if you're in a leadership role or not. There can often be additional leadership orientation that happens, or like in healthcare, for example, we used to have nursing orientation if you're a nurse. So very role specific orientation on top of company orientation. So I think every company should have kind of a company wide orientation, but then you might have departmental or role based orientation as well.
Yeah, love that. I love that we're pointing out just the differences that can happen in different industries. And I know each of you come from a different, nonprofit startup, like law firm, like you have experiences across all these. So it's great to get that perspective. So regardless of the time frame that this falls in, right? Let's say it's a day, a week, however long it takes, let's talk a little bit about the importance of it. Like, how can we really justify a week or 2 of onboarding? Because I know that probably takes a lot of HR's time, and maybe a senior leader's looking at your calendar saying, you have Monday every day, every week booked off to greet new employees. Like, how do we justify that? April, I'd love if you could kind of share, like, what do you see as the benefits of a really good new hire orientation? And maybe Tammy can chime in as well.
Well, I mean, what it really does is it brings people into the fold, into the company. It makes them feel a part of things. For those longer orientations, I think it's important for people to meet senior leaders, understand what the organization kind of looks like from an org chart perspective. We've talked about some of those training issues. Lotus mentioned healthcare. I mean, those are some really, really specific training depending on the job. I just think it just depends on the size of your organization, for one, I think is the biggest thing, but also just, it helps people identify what the organization is, what their role is in the organization. And I think one of the best things about new hire orientation, if you can do it in a group, which isn't always possible, it helps them meet people in other departments, and build those friendships, and helps them collaborate. So you get rid of some of those silos.
Yeah. Love that, April. Tammy, what would you add to kind of the benefits of a good orientation?
Yeah, I think April nailed it. And I sort of think about, the recruitment process right up until the offer is accepted as the first impression for anybody joining a company. And new hire orientation is sort of the second impression, but it's our chance to really share what we're about as a company and help people understand their role in that. Definitely a great chance to meet other folks, learn what other departments do. A lot of times people join a company and have sort of no idea what anyone else is doing in other departments or areas. So if there's a way to incorporate that, I think it's great to give new folks a good sense of sort of who is here and what we really do. And it's a great chance to introduce people to mission and culture. So to get people sort of seeing themselves as part of the company is really possible during new hire orientation.
Yeah, love it. Lots of great benefits. Obviously, we're all advocating for more and better orientating. Let's get into the weeds a little bit. And I think each of you has sort of brought up some of the items that are going to be on this list. But let's just really get out right now a solid list of what are we actually doing at these new hire orientations, or what do people need to understand? And I have a feeling it's like a very long list, but let's just try to get through it together. Lotus, do you want to take us as far as you can on just like this checklist of items you want to go over?
Yeah, I'll actually speak at a high level. I think that, we could go through this entire list of stuff. I think a lot of companies, they go over policies, benefits, compliance during orientation, dress code. I think Tammy mentioned that. So there's a huge laundry list of things that are kind of like business logistics that you go over. But I actually really think that we're missing an opportunity if we don't use orientation to really exemplify our culture and get new hires really, really excited about working at our company. Go over your mission, vision, and values. Don't just read them, make it an activity, make it engaging to go through that so that everybody's rowing in the same direction. Go through your OKRs if you're a startup or if you're a bigger company. What is the direction for the next year for the company so that everybody knows what that is the second that they start. Share stories from current employees about why they love working at your company. Build in meaningful networking opportunities. I think April mentioned, this is a chance to make friendships, allow activities and events for people to really get to know each other so that the new hires at each orientation can build their own cohort together so that they will always have people that they can share their journey with throughout their career at your company. So they never feel alone or excluded. They always have a place to go back to when they have a hard day, and friends that they can go back to.
Yeah. Love that. April, anything you would add in addition to, I love the high level, just like people need to be excited and have fun and realize that this is going to be a good place to be for the next, hopefully multiple years. Right. But April, what else would you add to kind of you're leaving onboarding, you're leaving the orientation meeting and you're thinking to yourself, okay, everything didn't go perfectly, but at least I did X, or at least I did Y or Z, right? What are some of those big ones for you?
And Lotus hit on this. I think one of the big ones is making sure that they know who they can go to. And so I currently work in a smaller organization. And so on that first day, I have other people in similar roles come have lunch with that person. And I try and mix it up so that we're on 3 floors of a building. So I have somebody from each floor, or, different departments, but same position, that sort of thing, so that they have somebody to go to with questions, or like Lotus said, if they just have a bad day and need somebody to talk to. And then I want people to leave with swag. I want people to leave I worked at GE for a while. I used to joke that I wanted them to leave ready to get the GE meatball tattooed on their arm, that they were just so
Yeah.
stoked. And I think having that swag and going home that first day to show your family and friends, hey, even if it's just that little thing like the mug or whatever, but having those swag things, I think, are a big deal. Another thing I really like to include in orientation is just kind of the history of a company. Even if it's a startup, it's got a super cool history, and there's been really exciting, fun things that have happened. I worked at JP Morgan Chase years ago. That company has roots with Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr, and the gun in their duel is actually on display at 30 Rock at their headquarters. So those are fun things, right? Like, who doesn't want to know that our company was started over a duel, or somebody had a great idea in their mom's basement. So I just think the more excitement you can give them, the more passion you can give them about the business, about the purpose, about their job in particular, the better.
Yeah, I love it.
I totally second the swag. I get begged for swag on a daily basis.
And the cooler the swag, the better. We have dog bandanas are a huge thing right now. Like, people love the dog bandanas.
Yeah. April, I'm imagining you just with like a t-shirt cannon just shooting into this crowd of new hires, right?
I would love that.
This is great. I'm kind of picking up a little bit of this tension though between, let's say we're having a really thorough onboarding process that takes weeks or a week, right? But then also excitement, right? And so you're trying to group compliance, but also like get the team spirit and culture in there. I'd love to just hear from everyone here. And April and Lotus and Tammy, you guys have already shared, I think, a lot of great ideas that fit into this. But what is your favorite thing that you've seen done in a new hire orientation that you feel like has really brought that excitement, kept people engaged? What are some of your favorite tactics you've seen, in addition to the ones we've already talked about? Tammy, I'd love if you could start us off here, and then we can work sort of in backwards, reverse, alphabetical here, Lotus, and then April.
Yeah, sure. I think swag is always good. People are always really excited about swag. So that's definitely one. And I would be lying if I didn't say food. Bribing people with some sort of food or treats really keeps them engaged and excited for whatever reason. I mean, we all like to snack. But I think what April and Lotus were sort of getting at touches on this too, is that the more personal you can make it to the company and the more relevant, the better. So you can't just like slap something on. I mean, you can, people do, right? Companies do that where they just sort of churn through the orientation. Here's the handbook, anti-discrimination policies, that kind of thing. And those have their place. But if it's not connected and personal, it's not going to stick with people. So one of the things that I've really enjoyed at a company, I worked for a startup for a time, and they had a lot of really specific terminology that you would never know if you didn't work there. So we got a dictionary of all the acronyms and terminology on the first day, and it was like fun. It had clip art and whatever in it. So something like that is really fun. And I've done a lot of different icebreakers and things like that to get people talking to each other. And that's the stuff that after the fact, if people don't remember a policy or a handbook article or whatever it is, if they remember that they can call me if they have any trouble, and they remember somebody that they met, I think those are some of the most effective ways I've seen of keeping people engaged.
Perfect, Tammy. Lotus, what about you? Most effective, engaging onboarding or orientation?
My head is spinning. I wish I would have thought about this earlier, because there's so many things, but a few things that are coming to mind. Invite your CEO or your senior leaders to new hire orientation. People love meeting your startup. Bring the founders, have them share their story, the CEOs, senior leaders of different areas. You can rotate them out depending on who you have in orientation that day or that week. The other thing I love is doing like a buddy program or a peer partner program where every new hire is partnered with someone who's been at the company for a while, so that they can ask those questions that they're sometimes embarrassed to ask their boss or their team members. They have a peer partner that they can really ask about how things work at the company. those relationships, we usually do it formally for like either 90 days to 6 months, but I've always seen those relationships last a lifetime. They become like your best friend at the company. And so those have always been really effective. And then the last thing I would say is any key contacts. You know, a lot of companies, that's going to be some of your HR departments, some of your finance department, supply chain, those kind of key contacts that everyone in the company should really, really know, because they offer services internally to employees.
Great ideas. April, we'll give you the last word on this question. Favorite ideas for orientation, for engagement?
I think just breaking it up, right? Like, especially if it's a longer orientation, if it's multiple days, you've got to have something every day that breaks things up, that excites people. And whether that's icebreakers or fun treats coming in, lunches, tours, are great fun company videos. I know we've got some super silly videos that we've created over the years, and people get, even if they don't know who those people are, it helps them learn who people are and helps them feel the company culture. So, anything that you can do to help engage. If you are doing nothing but lights out slideshows for 5 days, you're going to lose people.
Yeah.
Mentally, if not physically.
Yeah. And I mean, where my mind originally went when you said that, losing people, is like they're going to churn quickly too, because they're going to realize they're at a place that's not, the first impression, right, is not as good as great ideas. I think we have a great list. Anyone who's listening right now is well equipped and probably overwhelmed with the amount of things they can do. So that's awesome. You three have all mentioned forming connections between people and meeting people, both the new hires meeting each other and also meeting senior leadership. And I want to dive into that a little bit. And Lotus, we'll actually have you start this one off, and then maybe Tammy, you can follow up. But who do you think they should meet on their first day, or throughout the orientation process, in addition to just meeting each other? And then the broader question I think we'll get to in a second here is, how do you convince those senior leaders to be taking time out of their day and to show up, especially if it's like the CEO, like you said? Lotus, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I guess I jumped ahead a little on that question, didn't I? Definitely, I think your CEO, if that's not important to them, like that's challenging. That means there's something in the culture that's creating that. When I worked in healthcare, our CEO, he missed after 5 years, I think, his first orientation with our new hires, because of a family emergency. 5 years straight, he's been to every single new hire orientation. If they care about the culture and they care about really retaining employees, especially in this market that we're in right now, they'll want to be there. It's strategic. It should be part of their strategic plan, as well as the other senior leaders. But if your CEO does it, your senior leaders are not going to say no to you. You just need to convince the CEO, right? I think it's also important, though, to make sure that you're connecting with your supervisor. Obviously, you probably met them already during the interview process, but connecting with your supervisor on the first day and some of your team members, I think, makes a big difference from the very beginning. So you don't feel like lost and feel like, what do I need to do, right? There's certain questions when you start a new job that you're going to have for your immediate supervisor, for your immediate teammates, anyone who might be training you. So I think those are all important relationships to build right away. And then we also mentioned the networking, meeting people from other departments, I think, is so critical, because it's so easy to fall into our own silos and our own departments. And so having some cross-functional relationships is amazing, right? Like every company I go to, like my goal day one is to meet someone from IT, because I always need technical help, right? And so I think giving people those opportunities are great. I just wanted to call out, I was looking at the comments. I'm not sure if it's Tamara or how to pronounce your name, I'm sorry, but she made a comment in there too about insider information about where the best coffee spots are. I think that's great. And gender neutral bathrooms, like that's
Mm,
an amazing thing to have in your day one orientation.
yeah. It's like a geographic orientation too. You're like really telling them where to
And
go.
really inclusivity. Like I love that comment.
Um, love it, Lotus. Tammy, would you add anything to that? Have you had a similar experience with senior leadership and getting them to show up and engage new hires? And would you add anyone to this list of people to potentially meet?
Yeah, I think it depends. The great answer in HR is always it depends, but it depends on the company. I've worked in higher education where the college president did not come to every orientation, which happened like every other week. But the organization that I work for now is small. And so, yes, our executive director meets with every new hire on their first day. Lotus gave a really great list. IT is such a huge one, right? We're all needing tech support like all the time. So that's a big one. For folks joining my organization, they meet me on their first day. We talk about, we do go through the handbook, but we mostly talk about things that apply to them and sort of the HR orientation. So if not meeting with someone from HR, getting a list of who they should call with what questions, especially benefits questions, that's usually an early one that we talk about. And then I really love this comment about the bathrooms, the coffee pot. For folks that are working in an office, a tour of the office and like where all the secret spaces and the best lunch and all those things are, those are really important. And something that maybe has been a little bit of a struggle in a hybrid environment or a remote environment, our onboarding looks really different. So connecting them to more people, I think, as Lotus sort of mentioned, is really the key to getting people feeling connected. And you don't want your new hire to show up on their first day, especially in a remote environment, and just sort of sit there and like, what do I do? So booking some time with lots of breaks, but lots of time with people, meeting different folks, and definitely folks from different teams. We have sort of a less formal onboarding new hire orientation process, but we have folks join a team meeting from each different team. So they sort of get the history of that team, what they do, how they do it. And really learn a little bit about their new colleagues.
Yeah. Tammy, I'm really glad you brought up the remoteness of new hire orientations these days. I think that'd be good to spend a second together just talking about that. Is there anything else you'd add there, Tammy, that you've had to do different for remote employees specifically to still give them that engaging experience and make them feel connected? And then I'd love either Lotus or April or both of you, if you have something you want to share too, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's like still evolving a little bit, but for me, it really just means devoting more sort of one-on-one time to our new hires, where if we were in person, we might all be in the conference room learning together. And for me now, it's sitting one-on-one on a Zoom or a screen share with somebody and really just walking through benefits options and really just taking time to chat with them, and not even about work-related things, just sort of about where they come from, what I do and how I do it, to get a better sense of things and make it feel a little more personal, which is so hard to do over a screen versus in person where you can have treats and things like that. So one of the things that we do on folks' first day is we use an expense account. We use Expensify. So we tell folks like get lunch and hang out with one of your coworkers or a buddy. We have a buddy system on your first day, and buy lunch and just, sit and chat. Don't talk about work, just sort of get to know each other. So just trying to find those little ways, those moments of connection and ways to make it personal.
I love that. April or Lotus, there's anything you'd want to add to the conversation on remote new hire orientations? April?
I think a lot of companies have started doing little fun things that they can do virtually as well. And so, for instance, introduce them to the Slack channels that your organization has, whether it's the golf group or the board game group or, whatever that looks like for you. I think that is a fun way to help them become engaged, especially in that remote environment. I mean, that's a great thing to know as well, because even in person, because there's always those subgroups, right, in any organization that aren't necessarily the legal assistant group. I mean, that's obvious, but then do you know that there's a diversity group that you could join, or a women's network that you could join? Yeah. Those sorts of things I think are really important to understand as well. And this may sound super old-fashioned, but I think providing people with and if you're virtual, you obviously can't do this as easily, but with a hard copy of those key contacts, because inevitably they're going to get panicked and not know where to look to find the person's name. But if they've got that hard copy binder, they know that they can, there's 10 pages in there or whatever that they can look through really quickly and find those contacts. Because if you're just, hey, go to our intranet and click IT. Well, we don't call them IT. We call them something different here, and you'd never find them if you went about it that way. So, yeah, I think Tammy mentioned, the jargon words, the lingo, the acronyms. Make sure that you help people out with those sorts of things. And then on a virtual front, send a gift of swag to their house for their first day. Or a treat basket, or something like that they have on their first day as well.
Yeah, sounds like we're trying to deliver the experience to them through the mail, or you're bringing them the binder, or you're having them buy the lunch, so that they still feel like they're experiencing it. I think that's all great.
Well, first of all, I want to work with April because it sounds like I would get a lot of swag, a lot of lunch, and a lot of treats. What I would add to that is, as your company settles into the new work environment, right? And that might not even happen for another year, right? Like every time we think this thing is over, the pandemic comes back. And so some companies have kind of said they've decided on what the future return to office plan is. Some companies haven't made that decision at all, and some are kind of teeter-tottering, right? And so as you make those decisions, talk to your employees. Like, I think doing a root cause analysis is really, really important to really understand what are the needs of your employee population, based on your industry, based on the work that they do, that they really, really need in that new environment, whether that's hybrid, whether that's remote. We're actually in the process of that now. It's on my wish list actually to totally revamp our orientation program. But a couple of the things that we've done already is we are looking into doing more video to be interactive. One of the things we found out from our employees in the remote environment is that orientation is a little bit different, because when you go into an office and everybody's in orientation together and it's like so much fun and you're interacting with each other in person all day, you're tired by the end of the day. But you remember that experience. Whereas in the remote environment, when we give them like literally a full day of back-to-back like intro meetings, it's too exhausting for them. Like they told us like they check out basically halfway through the day, because like that's just too much. And so a combination of synchronous and asynchronous orientation, I think, is a little bit more effective in the remote environment, because some of the training that you would normally offer all together, see if any of that can be done on demand, so that they have a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is to get that done. And they can kind of take that in bite-sized pieces, because our brains, when we learn virtually, micro learning is really, really big, because our attention span just is not that great.
Yeah.
So those are some of the lessons that we've learned. And then just from an engagement perspective, virtually, one of the things we do is in our regular all hands meetings, we introduce new employees at every single all hands. And then we also do 2 truths and a lie for our existing employees. So we always have an existing employee that will do that activity, and it just allows the company to get to know each other better in this remote environment when we can't be together.
Yeah. Lots of great insights there, Lotus. Thank you. I'm seeing Tamara also brought in another great suggestion. So Google is sending hats to their new employees and encouraging them to share them on social media, and they welcome them on social media in addition. So that's pretty cool. If you have a engaged employee base on social media, that you can kind of give them a shout out and engage with them too, because that's where they're spending a lot of virtual time. So thank you, Tamara. Awesome.
I love that.
We have really just one more thing to address here, and this is, so to set the scene here, right? So orientation's ended, and the employee has just gone through this amazing, engaging experience. It's also been kind of like a fire hose pointing at them, and they have, all these policies and the benefits they're trying to pick. And how do you really land and support them moving forward, so they have the information they need and can really get, like, I think especially like benefits and things where it's like, okay, now they have to make critical decisions, but they just had this crazy experience and they're getting started with their job. Anyways, it's probably just a really difficult time for them. How would you support them after orientation has ended? April, I'd love for you to kick us off on this one, and then maybe Tammy as well.
I think the key is follow-up, right? I mean, because they are drinking from a fire hose those first few days. And so what I usually try and do is set myself a reminder to follow up with them, especially on benefits, about a week, week and a half after orientation. That way they've had a little bit of time to process their new job. They maybe have had some time to formulate some questions about benefits. And so I'll set some time, 10, 15 minutes, just to check in, find out what questions they have, how I can help them out. And then I think that other thing that's super helpful for me, and Lotus mentioned that she's looking to revamp her process, is that, you know, a month or two in, you don't want to go too far out, but go to your new hire and say, what could have I done better? What would have helped you?
Mm.
What did I miss that you needed to know? Did anybody tell you that the orange juice in the fridge is for everybody and it's not just Bob's, you know? But the sandwich is Bob's, so don't eat that. You know, those little things, I think, help us as HR practitioners make the process better. And then I think just remembering that we have said and done this 100,000 times, but it is new to the person. And so maintaining that patience, maintaining kindness, and openness is a huge thing.
Thanks, April. Sorry, go ahead, Tammy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think April nailed it. And for me, I would just say adding multiple touch points if I can. So checking in about benefits and other things. My company uses Slack more than email. So just sending a quick note. You know, we have some really fun Slack channels. So if I don't see them in any of those, or nobody's onboarded them at that point to the Slack channels, it's like, hey, did you know we have the Cute Animals Slack channel where people post pictures of their cats and dogs every day? And it's just fun and lighthearted. So just trying to keep them engaged in that way. And I think one of the things that I didn't mention earlier and popped in my head was I also work really closely with supervisors on what the onboarding / new hire orientation timeline and template look like for everybody. So just checking in with the supervisor after, you know, a week or so. Hey, how's it feeling to supervise this person? How are they doing? What do you need from us? And just kind of checking in to make sure, you know, have you had them meet this person? Have they gone through this piece of the process yet? To sort of keep things, I think, flowing and maybe slow the fire hose stream just a little bit. So they're taking in, Lotus nailed it with saying micro learnings, like getting those little bits of information at a time, but always keeping it personal and just, you know, checking in with people regularly. We all get busy, but new folks to a company are sort of finding their way. And those of us who have been there can really help make it feel less scary.
Yeah. Thanks, Tammy. That was kind of our last topic, but I want to give everyone just one last opportunity to give their best piece of advice in a sentence or two. So we'll keep them short, but we're looking for impact here, right? Like, what is the big piece of advice that Lotus, April, and Tammy each want to send off to our listeners and watchers today? So, and then that'll be our last question. So, Lotus, I'm gonna give this over to you first, and then we'll go April and then Tammy. So if you need to take another second, Lotus, to just really think about it, because this is a really important sentence or two, that's totally fine, but we'd love to hear from you first.
Sure. I mean, I think just be creative. Like we talked about, we're in a time of change right now. So be really creative depending on kind of where your company lands in this whole on-site, remote, hybrid environment. And then do the follow-up. So to get at what April was saying, I've never been at a company where I've actually had the resources to do the personal check-in. So what we've done is we're in the startup environment, we do a 30-day survey. to all of our new hires. And when I worked for bigger companies, we did a 90-day survey, and those results were shared with our leaders so that they really understood what action plans they need to put in place to make some improvements within the onboarding process, and then what we need to do on our end to make improvements to the orientation session.
Perfect. Be creative and follow up. Sounds like it's great advice. April?
That is great advice. I think make it fun. And so that goes along with Lotus's creative. Make it fun and memorable. And like I said before, remember that this is all new to them. You've done it 100,000 times, but it's new to them. And so it's not going to be intuitive to them. It's not going to be secondhand to them. And they're going to have lots of questions. So smile and answer them. And I love the follow-up though. That is huge, because you never know when somebody's going to feel deserted. And so if you're following up and making sure those touch points are there, it's a big deal. And swag.
Let's be real here. This is it's all swag.
It's all swag. Swag.
That's the key. Tammy, last word to you.
Yeah, sure. Great advice from Lotus and April. I would add, keep it personal, get to know people. We're all human beings. We're not just cogs. So making sure to make those personal connections and make people feel engaged, and keep it relevant to the company. Microsoft's orientation is not going to work at Rainforest Action Network. So make it specific to your organization, and fun and creative. Yeah. And swag, always swag.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, you three. For those watching right now, if you want to learn more about new hire orientations, we have an article written about it here that you're welcome to check out. And please, please, please go connect with these panelists. They're all amazing. We have kind of this link where you can find their member profile pages for HR Mavericks and learn a bit more about them. But so grateful to you three. We hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And April, you checked out a little bit early for us. I know I wasn't very engaged. Sorry, I was trying to make a joke. It didn't work out very well. So grateful you guys came. And we'll see you again sometime soon. See you.